Okay, back again we are. This time we're going to talk about the ABLES. We talked about the BLA, but the main thing that Sundberg and Partington and then Partington are known for is the ABLES, the assessment of basic language and learning skills. And I think this is an incredibly interesting instrument. At the time that it was developed, it was really such a contribution to the field because we had nothing that really helped in terms of looking behavior analytically at the breadth and depth of skill assessment. The kinds of questions that they ask in the ABLES, I think, are just so great from a behavior analytic point of view. They have the mindset of operational definition. And so they can take a skill and say, well, but how well can he do this? And how independently can he do this? And in what contexts can he do this? And those are incredible contributions. So it's a very comprehensive tool that's used for developing goals and tracking progress over several years. And it's a comprehensive planning tool. One thing I want to say about it is not supposed to be a curricular planning guide. It's not supposed to be an IEP tool. It's supposed to be an assessment for you to understand where is this individual at this point in time with their skill set in this area. It's great because it includes observable, measurable criteria. There are varied categories of skill development that are very relevant to autism, and all the progression is based on the functional use of the skill, which I love. There are 25 categories in the ABLES-R: cooperation and reinforcer effectiveness, visual performance, receptive language, imitation, focal imitation, requesting or manding, labeling or tacting, intraverbals, spontaneous vocalizations, syntax and grammar, play and leisure, social interaction, group instruction, classroom routine, generalized responding, reading, math, writing, spelling, and dressing, eating, grooming, toileting, gross motor, and fine motor. So as you can see, it's designed to assess a wide variety of language skills, and it's designed to account for a child's motivation to respond, which you'll see when we look at some of them. And to look at issues we know are important in autism, like can they attend to a variety of environmental stimuli? Can they generalize skills? Is there any spontaneous demonstration of skills? And from a language perspective, I think you'll see it looks at teaching language in environmental contexts in a lot of detail. The specificity of the assessment piece here, I think, really ensures that we don't miss deficits among learners on the spectrum. So I really like the ABLES. I think the ABLES is incredibly useful. I know a lot of you have probably already administered it or are familiar with it, and for some of you, you're brand new to it. But it really enables us to look at the assessment of skills under a variety of motivational conditions and the ability to generalize to new contexts and new materials. And it's very comprehensive. It does have a social skill focus, which is nice. And again, it really examines the functional use of skills. So I want to talk a little bit about how to score the ABLES, because that's a bit different than, or just unique. So one of the things is that it's important to score items that represent what the student is able to do now and what they're typically able to do. Not their best day ever, but what they generally do, what you could reliably count on them to do from a skill demonstration perspective. And if they require prompts to engage in it, your score is supposed to reflect that, so that this whole issue of independence is worded into the actual items that you're answering. So initially, the way the ABLES is generally done is you are allowed to go through it as kind of a question and answer. As the parent or teacher, score what you know to be true. You know, if you look at some of these, areas, there are pages and pages and pages of what you need to score in terms of requesting. You don't need to administer every item. If you absolutely know that requesting F1, do they indicate? Yes. F2, do they do multiply controlled requests? So if you ask, what do you want, with the reinforcer present and a prompt, they would do it. Will they do it with the reinforcer present when asked, what do you want? Will they do it without the reinforcer present, but just asked, what do you want? These are not things that you actually need to test out. You know your learner in some of these contexts. If you didn't know the answer, you would need to test it. But if you know the answer to that question, you may fill it out. It's the questions in which there's some ambiguity or some uncertainty about the individual skill level, in which you would weight to score. You could rough score it with a question mark or something if you're not certain, or you can leave it blank and go back to do it later. So if you really can't even roughly score it, you would leave it blank. So let's look at the skill sheet itself. So you can see along the bottom here, cooperation and reinforcer, effectiveness, visual performance, receptive language. Each of those 25 areas appears as its own grid. And what you can do is fill in, each one has the little boxes. So look at A1, which is reinforcer effectiveness. That means turn to cooperation and reinforcer effectiveness. On page 1 of that, task A1 is takes reinforcer when offered. And the question is, when I hold out and offer a known reinforcer, will the student take the reinforcer? Example, M&M taken and eaten. You give them a 1 if either not all the time or takes more than 3 seconds, a 2 if they take it within 3 seconds all the time. So you'll notice that A1 is divided into 2 areas. So if they got a 1, you'd shade in just that first part. If they got a 2, you'd shade in both. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, you'll notice that I did say you could administer this over several years. And that's because you can give different administrations. So it says the assessor, hang on, I'm going to grab my glasses. I apologize for that. I am now too old to not have glasses when looking at the ABLES. I'm sorry to say. So you'll see that it says assessor, date, and the color code. What this means is that I could say, in February of 2012, Mary Jane assessed this individual and we used turquoise. And then I would fill in turquoise for the bars that are appropriate for that particular year. Now, in February of 2013, Joey might do the assessment and Joey might use navy blue. And Joey would then take, so maybe by then we're up to, maybe we've mastered all the way up to A9, looks to instructor for instruction. So here we've gone a long way from just accepting reinforcers, and now they've got some learning to learn types of skills that are involved. And so we might have had just that first grid in turquoise, and we might have all the way up through A9, then shaded navy blue. Now, you're saying, why am I doing this? One of the reasons why you're doing that is because you can then see, what's my acquisition like in year 1? What's my acquisition like in year 2, in year 3, in year 4? And also it keeps you able to track whether you need to identify different holes in that individual's skill set. Are there gaps? Are there things that maybe we should have filled in? So after you circle the skill level on the ABLES, you fill in the appropriate skill box. If they received a score of 0, you fill in the circle to the left of the item, and you do not fill it in. And each time the ABLES is updated, you use a different colored marker or colored pencil. It is recommended that the ABLES be updated at least annually. I have done in my career, I've done a lot of early intervention work with students with autism. And sometimes those learners are extremely rapid learners who are acquiring skills very quickly. And there's a need to do a more frequent assessment. You can give the ABLES every 4 to 6 months in circumstances like that. You would disregard the colored circles from the previous assessments during the updating process, obviously, because that's only really applies to the first time you did it. If the student scores lower than they did in previous administrations, it might be inaccurate, so sometimes you could run a little test on that. Or maybe they, in fact, are losing some skills, which is something that clinically you would need to attend to. Now, Sundberg and Partington believe that the basic learning skills A through P are critical learning to learn skills, and that Q through T are really more academic-oriented skills. So everything under basic learning, A through P through generalized responding, those are going to be your early targets. Q through T, reading, math, writing, and spelling are really academic skills. And the self-help skills can be targeted in conjunction with the A through P, basic language skills, but they shouldn't take precedence over those. They also talk about how motor skills should be incorporated into the day, but shouldn't be emphasized over basic skills, and that progress should be targeted across all areas. Oops, slideshow. Okay. Now, we've talked about this. Not sure why that happened. Sorry, guys. Okay. I think that was it. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to talk about a few of the grids themselves, because you've got a good sense, I think, of how the ABLES is structured and about these concepts of breadth and depth. I hope you're getting a little bit of a sense about what the administration of it would look like. We looked at imitation already because we did that as part of our sequence last week. So you've had some introduction to the ABLES, but I'm going to select a few that I think are particularly interesting for us to look at. And the first one that I'm going to look at is manding. So I want you to turn to that in your book. And start with F1. It starts on page 30 of your booklet here. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this is just because of how centrally important MAND training is, both from a curricular perspective, from a communications perspective, but mostly because I feel like it's a weak area for many people in terms of goal development, in that people have a tendency to think about manding in a very narrow and circumscribed way. You know, can he mand, yes or no? And we think about manding for items. And I think breadth and depth is missing in almost every example I see of MAND training. So I want you guys to become good MAND trainers. And one of the ways is to look at the way Sundberg and Partington conceptualized it. So look at F1. F1, requests by indicating. The task objective, they will be able to specifically indicate items and activities they want by pointing to, pulling, or standing by the particular items or activities. Does the student indicate what he wants by pointing, pulling, or standing without using words or sign language? Give them a 1 if they request one item or activity at least once a day. A 2 if they have at least 5 per day, which includes at least 3 different items or activities. So a 1 is the kid who takes their shoes to the sliding glass door when they want to go outside, but nothing else. And a 2, you'd need to really look at, do they do 5 different things, which include at least 5 requests per day, which include at least 3 different things. So again, how strong is this repertoire is one of the things. F2, multiply controlled requests. Here you get into the fact that the student will ask for what he wants, and when the reinforcer is present, an assign or word is given. So what do you want? And the reinforcer is present, and I say apple, or I sign apple. And a 1 is for if they get 1 item or activity, and a 10 is all the way up to 10 or more items or activity. F3, a little bit tougher. Here in this case, do they do it with what do you want, but without the item present? F4, requesting when asked what do you want, and can they do it, will they ask for an item or activity with 2 items or activities all the way up to 10 items or activities. You'll see that F5, no prompts, spontaneous requests. And they don't get a 4 unless they're doing 10 or more when the items or items associated are present. F6, spontaneous requests with them not present. So again, kind of moving up the ladder of complexity in terms of closer to what we want in terms of ultimately being able to demand for things that are not present. F7, requests with eye contact. They make eye contact when asking for things. A 1 makes eye contact 50% of the time. A 2 80% of the times that they're making requests. F8, here we're finally going a little bit beyond simple manding for required or requested items. So here we're going for requesting others to perform an action. So will they actually ask individuals to perform an action? Asking others to come, stand up, sing, push them on the swing, pick me up, etc. And again, in the criteria, you will see a 1 is for only one thing. A 4 is can request 10 or more different actions. By the way, you'll notice over here these little circles. These are all the different times you could administer this. So this could be 4 administrations over 4 years. First year they got a 0, second year they got a 1, next year they got a 2, etc. Again, I say look at F9, requesting missing items needed for a task. Different kind of manding. Now I'm asking you for something I need, not quite as concrete as pretzel or water. Requests with head movements by saying yes and no. Requests using sentences. So a little bit more, okay, what's the quality of the way this person is requesting or communicating with me? Do I see other elements of communication developing? F12, requests help. Okay, now we're getting into other functions of manding. Think about the way you mand in your life. You don't just mand for things you want to eat and things you want to drink. You mand for an awful lot of things from your friends and family and coworkers. And one of the things you might mand for is help. F13, starting to look at that sort of generalization of the learning to learn phenomenon, acquires novel requests without intensive training. F14, we're back to other kinds of manding. Requests attention. Think about how important that is for behavioral issues. And you can see that a 1 is 2 requests per day. A 4 is 10 or more requests per day. F15, requesting others to remove an item or stop an activity. Again, so relevant for behavioral self-regulation. Being able to ask others to stop or go away, right? F16, looking at the complexity of what we're able to ask for. Can we request using adjectives? F17, using prepositions. F18, requesting future items or events. Again, we're looking at the strength of that as a repertoire. How many different kinds of things can we ask for, and in how many different kinds of ways? F19 gets into requests information using what. F20 using where. F21 using who and whose. F22, adverbs. F23, pronouns. F24, which. F25, when. F26, how. F27, can, do, does, or will. F28, why. And you'll notice that a 2, if you look at those, is often spontaneously. So if you look at F28, a 2 is spontaneously asks why questions in non-training situations when unknown items are present. So think about typical development. And kids who are typically developing do that kind of stuff all the time. But generally we see individuals on the autism spectrum so far from that, and many may never get to that level. But that's kind of, the broad-reaching goals for those who might be capable of it. And F29 is spontaneous requests. Do they spontaneously request throughout the day? Nice theme in the ABLES that you will always see is exactly this kind of issue, where our ultimate goal, our ultimate outcome is spontaneous requesting in the natural environment throughout the course of their day. And they actually have that as the last item here. A 1 being spontaneously requests objects, actions, or information at least 10 times a day. A 2 is at least 20 times a day. So I know you've looked at imitation, now you've looked at manding. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of some of the strengths and unique aspects of the ABLES. I would like you to spend time looking carefully at each of the 25 areas to get a sense of the breadth and depth of this instrument and each of the themes within those areas. But for now, I'm just going to select another couple of progressions that I particularly like. I like intraverbals also, which is area H, which begins on page 43. So you can look at that with me together for a couple more minutes. So you'll notice, and I already mentioned in the lecture earlier, that fill-ins were a big contribution of Sundberg and Partington to how we conceptualize conversational speech. And H1, fill in words from songs. While others are singing a song, the student will be able to fill in some words or phrases. Can they fill these in while others are singing? The itsy bitsy spider, etc. A word from 2 songs. A 2 would be 2 words from 2 songs. A 3 would be 3 words from 3 songs. A 4 would be at least 3 phrases from 6 songs. Again, looking at, okay, how strong is this repertoire? H2, filling in blanks regarding fun activities. Let's go up and down, Winnie the Pooh, etc. Same kind of thing in terms of the scoring. Let's go to H4, animal sounds. When they hear the statement, a dog says, they'll be able to fill that in. And then at H5, we start to get into a little bit more of what you might think of as social questions or other kinds of early conversational speech. Do they answer questions regarding personal information? What's your name? How old are you? Etc. And then we're back to fill-ins, filling in words describing common activities. So, it's time to wash your hands, time to brush your teeth, etc. H7, intraverbal associations. So what goes with socks, shoes? What goes with bat, ball? Again, looking at kind of the association development of language, which is also part of what builds our conversational abilities. H8, fill in the item given the function. So when the student hears the statement, you ride in a car, do they fill in car? H9, did they fill in the function given the item? You use scissors to cut. You use a spoon to eat. And again, that issue of breadth and depth, 20 or more fill-ins with 2 responses would get you a 4 on that particular item. H10, answers what questions regarding what's found in the home? So what can you find in the bathroom? What do you find in the refrigerator? Again, think about how they're always trying to build that conversational ability by focusing on, do you know more than just labels? Because we're not going to be good conversationalists if we only know labels. Answering what questions regarding functions. Answering where questions regarding items found in the classroom or in the home. Answering where questions regarding activities done in school or at home. Where do you sleep, etc. Look down further a little bit, filling H16, filling in the features given the item. A car has a wheel or a horn or a door. And again, they're looking for somebody being able to generate more than just one thing so that you don't just learn car, door, but you can say door or horn or etc. So they're always looking at the flexibility of language programming that we do as well. And that's interesting because I think that's a way for us to program as well. It's built into the assessment, but it can inform our programming in that way too. H18, fill in the class given the item. Can they fill in the remaining word of a phrase to specify the class? A dog is an animal. A car is a vehicle, etc. Okay, H19. Name items previously observed. You go outside, you see a fire truck, you come back in the classroom, and you say, what did you just see outside? And a 1 would get you, you could do 1 item immediately after the observation, and a 4 is 2 or more items an hour after the observation. So we're building memory, and conversation is often built around past experiences or recent experiences. So that's why that's contained in here, because if you can't do that, you're more limited in terms of what your conversational abilities will be. Name previously observed activities, name previously observed people. H22, with visual display, makes related statements. So when shown a picture and told something about it, like, look, they're having a picnic, do they make comments regarding what's observed in the picture? A 1, they can expand or comment on 1 picture. A 4, they can expand or comment on 20 pictures. Answering what questions relevant to what's found in the community, answering what questions relevant to activities, etc. I like H26, answers questions with multiple responses concerning the immediate community. Tell me as many things that you can get from a grocery store as you can think of. Tell me all the animals you can see at the zoo. Tell me all the birds that eat at your bird feeder. All of those are really interesting in terms of how many categories they can do it across and how many items within those categories they can list. Now you're talking about language generativity, the ability to retrieve and to associate and to converse about that. They also say H27 states class given multiple examples: apple, banana, pear. They're all fruits. So we're looking at classification, but classification at the level of language and conversation, not just receptively with sorting, etc. Age 28 and 29, now we get into what people have traditionally thought about as conversational programming. Who questions, when questions. Age 30, discriminating questions asked about items and activities. Which questions, how questions, why questions. Age 34, can they describe the steps in a sequence of a daily activity? And age 35, can they state the activity when told the sequence of actions? Again, think about some of the things we talked about in sustained attention in imitation. Well, there's also a need for sustained attention in conversation. So if somebody's going to talk through the steps of something, have you been listening enough to be able to label the gestalt of what they're talking about and to go back in that way? Age 38 answers questions containing 2 critical stimuli. When they say, name hot foods, name blue foods, etc. That might be tough. There are a couple, I suppose. Can they describe items in age 40? Age 42, can they answer questions concerning past and upcoming events? Age 43, can they maintain a conversation with an adult or peer? You'll see a 1 is 3 exchanges on at least 5 different topics. So they have to be able to have more than one conversation, right? A 2 is 5 exchanges on at least 10 different topics, including the student asking at least 1 novel question. So again, think breadth, depth, think strength of the skill repertoire. They're finding ways to operationally define that, and they're giving us targets for what we're trying to get to. Age 44, can they answer novel questions? Questions they haven't been trained to answer. That's critically important for real functional conversational development. Can they answer questions relevant for current events? Can they answer questions with multiple responses in group conversations? What happened this morning when we were coming inside? What did we do yesterday? Those kinds of group conversations that are part of every classroom activity. Age 48, can they tell about their experiences or tell stories? And a 2 there would mean you can say at least 5 descriptions of events or stories that contain at least 5 components. So generativity again. Can you go home and tell your mom a bunch of things about your school day? Something a lot of parents of children with autism would like. And age 49, spontaneous conversation. And a 2 there is spontaneously adds or makes related comments during an ongoing conversation or discussion at least 10 times a day. So think about that in terms of breadth and depth as well. So we looked carefully at Manding and intraverbals. A couple of other ones that I'd like you all to spend some time looking at. I really like their group instruction one. I'm wondering what you folks think about that, but I think it's very, very, very nice the way they try to operationally define some of the behaviors that are part of being able to benefit from group instruction. And again, in the context of really attempting to operationally define some of these things, it's a tremendous contribution. So I hope that gave you a nice introduction to the ABLES. I know you're going to be getting very familiar with it in your work this week. Feel free to email me or call me about any questions you have. I don't want you struggling with the assignment or with the nature of the instrument. I want you to feel comfortable. So let's talk about that. So anyway, thanks for listening again, and I'll see you all real soon.